My name's Cody Smith.
I'm Tierra Penner.
Hi there, I'm Tim Ocampo.
And the three of us are the hosts of the Last Podbender.
Everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the Podbender.
You have to do that into the microphone.
I did it into the microphone, just my eyes were looking at you.
And talk with authority. Gotta be like, hello everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of the new podcast that we're calling The Last Podbender.
The Last Podbender, I did forget the last.
You even screwed up the name.
Whatever,
Wow.
man.
We are the first last pod. No,
we are. We are the first.
we are the first. Starting now.
Yeah. So we're the first Last Podbender. This is getting convoluted. Anyways, this is a new podcast that we're doing here, and it is all about Avatar: The Last Airbender.
We'll be opening up the series with our little review and commentary on Book 1, Episode 1, The Boy in the Iceberg.
Yes, we are.
Ooh, that was good.
Yeah, Tim's like a professional.
Jesus Christ, I was like, what?
Stop guessing me up, I'm losing character.
You need to up your game.
Apparently.
We all make each other better. It's good. It's good.
So I guess before we get into this episode, probably just do some quick introductions. I'm thinking introduce yourself, maybe what element or bending force you most relate to, and then also I would like to know personally what number of watch through this is for you.
Oh no.
Yeah, because I'm Cody Smith. I would say your earthbending is my thing. And this is only my second watch through.
Yeah, and it's only because I made him watch it.
Yeah.
I'd like to take responsibility for his newly found obsession.
Actually, when we watched through it the first time, I watched the first episode. I was like, oh, I've seen this. And I'm sure we'll get into it. But when I tried to watch it on my own, I couldn't get past the first episode because the first episode is very kid oriented, I think. So anyways, you guys should introduce yourselves.
Hi there, my name is Timothy Ocampo. Growing up, should we not?
No,
Actually, hold on.
I was trying to whisper that so you didn't hear it.
This is my second or third watch through of watching this first episode. Growing up while watching it on the television, I heavily related to just waterbending and its culture and all the things that it stood for, being able to find balance. But I find myself in my adult life actually heavily relating to the principles of airbending and the sense of harmony and freedom. And also, I just really want to fly. Not even going to lie about that. I just want a body that could renegotiate with gravity. Is that too much to ask?
I'm Tierra Penner, and I would say that I'm a waterbender. I like the flowy of the movements. I also like that it's a very balanced element. And I just feel like I very much relate to a lot of the different waterbenders in the show, as well as just kind of what what waterbending kind of stands for and stuff.
What watch through is this for you?
Maybe fifth.
Oh, yeah.
I watched it so much.
And it's so good still.
It's funny because everybody else has a very good explanation as to why they are the bender that they are, and I'm just I like earthbending because it's cool. No, but actually I would say that I'm more of an earthbender because I like the practicality of it. I like the fact that you can get something concrete out of your bending abilities, and it's the only element that can be said about, maybe fire, I guess maybe water with ice, but I
was just gonna say ice.
But earth, definitely it's something concrete. You're basically shaping the world around you. That's which beautiful. I guess kind of all of them do in their own way, but I feel like earth is the most tangible.
That's beautiful. I remember actually one of the first times I actually got to hang out with you in particular as when we went up to the hikes. I don't remember which hike that was.
Rawson Lake.
Rawson Lake, yeah. We were up in Rawson Lake. We went to the very end of it, and I remember just reaching to the very top. There was like a lake and just these enormous just walls of mountains surrounding us. And I had no words for that moment except I feel very small. And then I remember just kind of like, you were in my peripheral vision, and then I think you were just like nodding along, and just, I remember you later telling me in the car, is like, oh, Tim gets it. And I think that's where, we also had that discussion of like, oh, hey, what element, I think you were still going through your first watch. So
I think we were still like maybe.
I think that maybe we just met Toph or hadn't quite met her
we
yet.
were just getting into it. Yeah.
But that's another thing that I love about this series overall is that you have different ways of like finding yourself in these stories and also finding ways to connect with other people in your real life in terms of how do you see yourself in this world. And that's something I really appreciate about the series. It's almost like a little litmus test when I make new friends. It's like, hey.
Have you watched Avatar? I don't know if we can be friends. Have you watched Avatar?
I mean, it worked out for you. Cody hadn't watched it yet, but then so it gives you something to look forward to.
I didn't make him watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's strange because it's technically a children's cartoon, but it's so relatable, and the themes that are explored within the whole series are almost more relatable to adults, I feel, because almost all the people that I know who have watched it in their adult life.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a guy I work with. He is 38 years old, and he actually also just watched Avatar: The Last Airbender for the first time. So
talking about like the themes and stuff and how like they get into some like pretty heavy themes in this, and like I remember I was working as a nanny and I was talking to the parents about this new show that I had started watching with their children.
Yeah, I know.
They're like, oh, what is it about? Like, can you tell us stuff about it? I'm like, yeah. And I was explaining it really poorly. I'm like, yeah, they go through some really heavy themes, and I could just see the mom, like, her eyebrows were raising. I was like, no, they handle it really well. Like, they handle it so children can understand it, but adults also kind of get this, like, the emotions and everything.
The subtext as well, too.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when you watch it as a child, so from what I remember, all you see is just the flashy colors and just like how they capture movement, how beautiful it is. You think of like Aang's excitement at all the different animals and like how this is almost a brand new world for him, the Water Tribe. And so as children, or even as the viewer, you kind of get to explore this whole new world alongside him, really. And it's always the heavier themes that are sown throughout the first episode. The fact that Sokka and Katara's mom is no longer with them, and how that it's affected their relationship, and that's a point of tension, and how it transitioned from that into something so fantastical, the Avatar rising from the iceberg. And I think how the directors and the writers get away with having something so heavy and having something so light at the same time is how they use timing, really.
Yeah.
And I think it's really beautiful. Oh my gosh.
I was noticing while we were watching this very first episode, and I was noticing how serious Sokka was, and it doesn't line up with how I remember him being. And I think that throughout the series he lightens up, because in the first episode he is very serious because he's taken on all of the responsibility for all of the men in the tribe.
Well, he's the only man left in the tribe.
Yeah. He has like all of this crazy responsibility on his shoulders, and I think that he kind of lets that go throughout the series, and you kind of get to see his more kid side come out.
Yeah. But you are correct. They do deal with like a lot of very serious kind of topics in the first episode that they kind of almost just breeze over a little bit.
They totally just brushed over it.
Yeah. Well, like Katara and Sokka's mom being dead, all like that there's been a war going on for 100 years. Like, that's pretty heavy.
Absolutely.
But then like they tell Aang and he's like, oh, really? And then he goes off and fucking penguin sleds. Like.
But also not even just talking about like Aang and Sokka and Katara. You meet Zuko. and you
Yes.
hear that he's been banished. You don't know why, but you hear that he's been banished and he wants to restore his honor. And it's like, that's a heavy theme.
he doesn't say he's been banished. He only says that he wants to restore his honor, and
True.
that it's
And it hinges.
hinges on his
capture.
capture of the Avatar. So
Yeah.
Something that I found, because I don't know at what point in this future, but I remember I just have this memory of Uncle Iroh discussing of learning from each of the nations and what each element kind of reflects in their culture. And if I remember correctly, the Water Tribe has a heavy value of community, and having that in mind, something really clicked in Katara and Sokka's interaction. They were fresh out of a fight. They were arguing. She was throwing shards of water and ice behind her. Sokka was looking really scared. I would be scared too if So you see this release of so much tension between them and all this anger being revealed. But when a mutual perceived threat approaches the both of them, they both instinctively kind of cling together. Like even in this shot right here, they instinctively cling together to protect each other. And I think that's such a beautiful representation of that sense of community that, and it's not even exclusively to the Water Tribe. Families fight, but if the people you care for are in trouble at the end of the day and you care for them, you show up instinctively. And I thought that was so beautiful.
That's actually something I noticed. Sorry, I cut you off.
okay.
That's something I noticed is like, yeah, Sokka's mad and they just had this huge fight. But as soon as there was a threat, he like covered her with his body and like shielded her. And I was like, wow, he was so mad 3 seconds ago.
I feel like those like that theme of kind of like family and community even finds its way into Zuko and Iroh, you know? Like even right off the bat, it's like Zuko he's not nice to his uncle sometimes, like especially in this first episode. He's like a little brat, honestly, but like he's still like kind of like, especially knowing what you know now, like he deeply respects Iroh, you know what I mean? And he is Zuko's father essentially because his father's a fucking dick. We'll get into that way later. But something else that I really noticed on the second watch through is actually the emotional nature of the bending that is going on in this first episode. Like Katara, when she's getting all mad and she breaks the iceberg, it's very anger driven. And same with Zuko when he's doing the fire bending with Iroh, it's very like anger driven, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, and something I commented when we were watching the episode is like when she was trying to bend that fish up, she was very unsure of her abilities and she wasn't confident, and so she's kind of like playing around with it. But like Aang is confident. He knows that he can do it, right? And so he is extremely confident, and Zuko's confident because he knows. And it's cool to see that Katara like grows that through the show, but she starts off very insecure about her bending abilities, and she's not very good.
Yeah. But it's kind of interesting too how Iroh is telling Zuko how fire bending works, but I feel like Zuko has his own interpretation of fire bending and channels it through anger, and that's something that he learns to get away from as the show progresses on. But initially, his firebending is like all about anger.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I love elaborating on the bending and also building off what you said here about Aang saying to Katara, if you want to learn to be a bender, you're gonna have to learn to let go of fear. And I think that letting go of fear is part of that confidence.
Yeah, I think so too.
Really beautiful. Something that was speaking to me throughout this first episode in regards to the bending. Oh my gosh, I love me some bending. I'm going to start backwards, I guess, from my thoughts. So going back to Iroh, he said, energy comes from the breath something like that. Energy comes, oh my gosh, I wish I remembered it. But something about energy, firebending comes from the breath, and the breath lends to the energy in the body where the firebending is released. And I just feel like there's a full circle moment there in terms of the very, very finale. Spoiler warning for people who have no idea what we're talking about. But I love how the energy in the body, I'm using air quotation marks. Wow, this is really the podcast life, isn't it? I'm using air quotation marks. But the energy in the body, it being referred to from the very, very beginning, and it being so such a pinnacle point at the end of the series is like, oh, I see what you did there, you sneaky writers, you sneaky writers. But yeah, what I noticed from our first glimpse of bending, so I was trying to view this as if this was the first time I've ever seen it. Our first glimpse of bending is actually Katara moving the fish out of the water. And I love... have you ever heard Jackie Chan say that, like, everything is kung fu, essentially? And I think what's beautiful about that, like, bending was never, like, so, like... True bending isn't just about violence. It's an expression of what your body can do. And I love that you see that in Katara's creativity. She probably never tried that before, or maybe she did, of trying to move the water while a living being is in it. And just how it was meant to enhance her life in some way, to meet that need of like, oh, hey, our village probably really needs this fish. My brother's out on the hunt. I'm going to help my brother. And this is my expression of that. And building off of how this expression is shown in Aang, you see how fluid and natural he incorporates bending into just his everyday life. It's like, oh, hey, I'm kneeling on the ground. I could just release I could just tense up my legs and stand up, but no, I'm gonna just hover and like let my feet find the ground afterwards. And I've noticed, because they keep teasing just how natural his breath and his breathing and how the air moves with him and he moves with the air. Like, it's like they keep sowing these seeds so seamlessly. And I love that bending is not just a weapon. It's an expression of who you are.
Yeah, it's kind of like the whole martial arts lifestyle, right? Like, if you do practice a martial art in like actual life, it's not about fighting or violence. It's a way of life. It's about controlling your movements, like channeling your emotions, not letting emotions control you. It's exactly what they say in this. Like, which is like, again, this is why we're doing this whole podcast, because there's so many fucking themes that just relate to everyday life and have like parallels in the real world.
Well, like, each bending style was based on a certain martial art. And I don't remember which correlates to which, but I do remember reading that. And like, each culture even is based on a real culture in our world.
I think we would be like remiss if we didn't mention that like this cartoon came out of, the early 2000s when, the whole anime thing was going crazy. You had things like Pokemon, you had Digimon, you had like Dragon Ball Z, and it looks like all these other animes, but it was made in the United States, which is interesting because they basically just, like, if you want to find a definition of cultural appropriation, like, Avatar: The Last Airbender might be, like, the epitome of that. Like,
how dare you say something so controversial yet so bold?
I don't know if it's cultural appropriation, because like, I feel like cultural appropriation is taking something...
It's taking something from another culture that's not yours and making money off of it.
It's more than that, though. It's like taking something from another culture and not respecting it. Yeah. And I feel like they do respect these cultures that they represent.
Fair.
I see that.
So for me,
I wasn't saying it as a bad thing. No, I was just saying it as like it's an observation.
Cultural appropriation has very negative connotations. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in, which, like, I do feel like Avatar: The Last Airbender does a really good job of respecting the cultures.
And honestly, as a kid, like, this might be your first introduction to maybe some of these cultural things, for sure.
That's really cool.
And they do a good job. They don't deviate from it. I just think it's interesting that it is such an anime-style cartoon that was made in the United States,
Yeah.
So.
It's beautiful.
I love how, like, your back got instantly up, even though, like, you the tiniest perception of an insult towards Avatar.
I'm sorry.
Hold me back.
Tim and I, like, looked over and I was like, oh, I have the same expression.
One last thing. Okay, heavy spoiler. But what I found, like, really kind of, I don't know, like, how to feel about that, actually. When Iroh was scolding Zuko about being impatient and needing to learn to master the basics, how he gave that talk about, like, breath, energy, firebending, and then went to do a controlled strike of flame right before his face. I don't know how to feel about that, but, like, in terms of just knowing the history of how Zuko got the scar, so I'm wondering if it's Zuko's desensitization of an authority figure showing power, or if it's just like trust. So I don't know, because what I'm observing this time around is like, wow, like as a child, I never expected Iroh to be such a character I would end up admiring and looking up to in the future. So that's what's so beautiful about, I guess, my expectations being subverted. So it's so strange, like it's like what you're saying before about seeing these characters. Like I have the lens of how I know what these characters are going to be in the end. So it's so strange having that contrast that they're not that way in these early moments. It's so strange. But I like to think that Zuko didn't flinch, and knowing that his uncle wouldn't like strike him or anything. It was more so to the point.
I had the same moment where I was like, oh my god, he's shooting fire into Zuko's face. Like, Zuko must be freaked out, but he didn't look freaked out. And like, I had the same thought where it's like, wow, they really must trust each other then.
Well, like we've said, like Iroh is basically Zuko's father because
But better.
What better?
But
What
he's
better?
like the father that Zuko deserves because again, Zuko's actual father is just a raging, I want to say C word, but I'm not going to. Gonna keep it kind of family friendly. But it's just like, yeah, like they must have developed and built that trust over so many, like, you know, Iroh takes, and also Zuko is the son that, you know, again, going way into the future, Zuko is the son that Iroh lost, you know?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like he channels that, like his fatherly energy now into this, his nephew. Also, I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about Appa a little bit.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Appa.
Tim had this moment when we were watching, and then there's like this flashback where they go into the water, and Tim's like, I hate seeing Appa in pain! And it was amazing.
You just deserve so much good things in fictional world and real world. If flying bison were to ever be discovered in the real world, I would just cry for 7 days straight, probably. And I love Appa. Oh my gosh.
I mean, he's like, honestly, he's probably one of the best characters, and he has literally 0 lines.
No, you're right. Actually, that's not true. There's one time where like they're hallucinating and then he talks, but like
that's way in the future.
I have full Stockholm syndrome for Appa. Like, he can do no wrong in my eyes, and that's probably not the healthiest thing. But anyways, I just love him.
He doesn't do anything wrong though. He is
he never ever does anything wrong.
He's 100% solid throughout the entire series.
I see. I'm not the only one with Stockholm syndrome. I'm okay with that.
He's the best character. I do find it interesting though that like I don't remember if it's a air nomad thing or if it's an avatar thing, like the arrows, right? Is that an avatar thing?
I thought it was an air nomad.
It is air nomad.
It's an air nomad.
It's a sim. It's like essentially when you become a master of airbending, this is the only time you could get those tattoos. So I don't think that's elaborated in this episode in particular, but I love the attention they were drawing towards it. I don't even know when they elaborate on that.
So they do a really good episode in Korra, I believe, and where there's people that follow the air nomad ways, but they're not airbenders, and they have tattoos, and Aang actually gets really upset.
Oh, yeah, in the comics, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Aang gets like really upset because they're like appropriating his culture, and they're not airbenders, so how dare they, basically.
I think it's a mark. I'm assuming we never actually really get to see pre-war air nomad culture explored really fully out. But I think it speaks to like the cost and the dedication it takes to get those marks of mastery. And yeah, it's really cool. I don't even know why his tattoos glow. Like it's fine. It's just very aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
I love it. I have no problem with it, but it's never explained. Yeah. And I love when he broke through the ice, just like the Aurora Borealis just kind of like dancing all around them. It was
that was really
beautiful.
Cool, actually. I never noticed that before, and I was like looking at it, I was like
okay.
Dang!
it almost kind of gives like rise to maybe the tattoos are maybe something more than just tattoos, you know what I mean? Like, are they channeling some sort of energy or something like exactly, why do they glow?
I feel like
Yeah.
They wouldn't just glow for no reason.
Personally, when I think about it, and when I think about, okay, the tattoos are like a mastery of this element, he got them when he was quite young because he found out that he was the Avatar. So I think for him, there's like an emotional connection between him and his arrow tattoos, whereas like the other avatars, like their eyes glow and whatever else glows. But like for Aang, it's a very much emotional connection with his tattoos, which to me makes sense why they glow.
I think building off of that, I think something I remember from I was talking in the far future in like season 2 about when he talks about all the different elements and how they play a part in the world. I think air is the one associated with spirituality, and I think knowing what we know about the Avatar being the bridge from the human realm and the spirit realm, I feel like the air nomad's value in spirituality is somehow infused, I guess, into the tattoos, and maybe that's why they're ghost tattoos, guys. They're ghost tattoos.
They're linking him to the spirit world.
Yeah, I can see that.
It is actually kind of neat how each separate element and each separate tribe is kind of like linked to almost different cultures, you know what I mean? The Fire Nation is obviously very industrial. It's like the industrial world. The Air Nomads are obviously very spiritual, monk-like. The Water Tribe is like kind of your...
It's very balanced.
Well, it's kind of like your nomad. It's not like... It's like a tribe, you know? It's like the Wanderers, like, they live very simply, you know? We get a glimpse of the water tribe's village in the South Pole here. And
in
it's
that
very
environment,
simple.
you can't survive alone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's community oriented, but it's like tents, igloos, and snow, and that's it, right? It's not extravagant. Like you go to the Fire Nation city, or you go to Amashu or whatever, the earthbending place.
Amashu, yeah.
Amashu. And it's like a grand city that is huge. And like, yes, at the end of this first season, you see the Water Tribe, the Northern Water Tribe's city, but it still feels like, you know, it's kind of like, I'm thinking like Mongolians, you know what I mean? Like how like they set up like roaming camps, but they did come together and have like this giant tent city as well, you know? So that's like kind of what I get from the Water Tribe.
That's beautiful.
So for the next episode, I will look it up and I will have an answer to which each element, element is linked to culturally, which they like, what they base it on. I will have an answer to that next episode.
But I also like the introduction just to the world, the animals and stuff. Like it obviously, it clearly does not take place in the like our world. You know what I mean? Like, and I guess they do explain that a little bit in the intro as well. Like they show the map and everything, but like the animals are completely different. They're just like they're still called penguins, but they don't look like penguins. They have 4 arms or whatever.
Like flying bison has like 6 legs.
Yeah. It's just like stuff like that is kind of like it keeps it's very grounded in reality, but it also keeps it kind of surreal enough to be a fantasy world, you know, but it still is. It obviously deals with like very real themes too. So,
and I like that. It's the themes that really help us ground it to our world, and then the fantasticness is what kind of draws us into it as well. So, yeah. Damn, I wish I could pull off Sokka's haircut.
Wasn't it like 2 or 3 years ago everybody was having like the man bun?
Oh yeah. The wolf's tail. Yeah.
Everybody was having Sokka's haircut.
He's an icon and he never got credit.
No, totally.
I always thought, I guess at this point I was like, oh man, Sokka's so grumpy. He's not fun. Like when I was watching this as a child, but now viewing him as an adult, it's like he has so much on his plate. Someone please help him. Like this makes sense. Like he's not allowed to take naps, I guess, or whatever. But
it was kind of cool watching. I didn't watch the whole series, but I watched a couple of the first episodes with these kids. And this little girl, she was about 8 years old, and she looked at me. She's like, "What is Katara's? What are the like loopy things?" And I was like, okay, so different cultures have different hairstyles. So you know how you put your hair in a ponytail, right? And it's all pulled back? And you know how I wear my hair down lots? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, it'll just be like me taking my hair and taking 2 parts of it and putting the rest back. And then, like, putting loopy things in it. It's just a different hairstyle. She's like, oh, okay. And it was, like, so interesting that she couldn't make sense of it. She's like, what is in front of her face?
Katara just sending culture shocks to these little North American girls. That's great. That's good.
Yeah. I also just, one thing that I want to mention is I really like how in this series they also have each element in each bending style is connected to a different martial art, is connected to a different culture, but it also is connected to like a different animal. And like each, like, you know, the air nomads have the flying bison and like
and the lemurs.
Well, yeah, but we'll also learn about more of, like, I don't want to, like, give it all away right now, but, like, you know, it's cool that, like, they take the bending elements and they apply it to people, but it also comes naturally to these animals, you know? They just do these things naturally, and it's like, you know, it's kind of like you learn from the animals, as we'll see in future shows. So
I'm trying to think which animal was the water tribe, and I can't think about it because I thought it was the moon that taught them.
Twee and Law.
No, but I thought it was the moon that taught them.
What shape did the moon take?
Okay,
yeah,
that's fair.
We'll learn about that in the future.
It's just like all of the other animals were like very abundant.
Yeah.
And I was trying to like put it on like an abundant animal that had water bending, but I couldn't think of one.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's fair, no, totally. And I do love me some Appa, but I think, again, maybe it's just my earth-bending roots, but my favorite animal are the fucking giant moles.
Oh, yeah. The badger moles
They're
are
pretty
so
cool.
Badger moles, yeah.
Those are pretty tight.
Those are great. Anyways, is there any kind of things you guys want to say more about the first episode here, or...
If you're watching the series and you're starting here, appreciate Gran.
Seriously.
Just appreciate her. You won't see her again. Dun dun dun. So ominous.
You'll hear about her.
Yeah.
We're not saying that she just like up and dies.
Well, we might be saying that.
Gran said women's rights.
She did. She said go explore.
Yeah.
Actually, one thing I will mention is I do like how, like, right at the beginning when Sokka is kind of trying to like apply these gender stereotypes towards Katara, she's like, you're a fucking sexist.
I'm not taking any of this bullshit.
Yeah,
your socks fucking smell. Sorry, beep that out.
She's very like, she's a strong woman, and it's very apparent right in the first episode.
Yeah. Where she isn't confident in her waterbending, she is very confident in who she is.
Yeah, she's very confident in her gender for sure. So that's cool.
But Gran did say Katara do chores.
Yeah.
But someone needs that.
But you know, everybody gotta
do chores. Yeah.
Everybody needs a Gran. Come on, you gotta keep them grounded.
True. Call me Gran.
Plus, it seems like Sokka's got a lot on his plate.
He does.
He builds watchtowers out of snow, trains the 4-year-old children to be warriors.
I think this is also him just trying to, connect to something that has been lost, because this community has lost all their men have gone to war, and so it's like this is almost him like honoring it, but also like I think it is evident of just how much he misses that, and him trying to like reach that level, like how much he looks up to them and trying to become that. He must have so much pressure on himself.
I also think that it's very apparent that like it's very obvious that Sokka is still a child in this first episode.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He is also a child, right? Like, he is not an adult. Like, and all this responsibility has been thrust upon him, and he is not ready for it, really. But he kind of pretends that he is, and he tries to be that man that everybody needs him to be.
It feels like he's almost trying to fill in as all, like, there's these little tiny children, and it feels like he's trying to fulfill that father figure for them. Because nobody knows when their fathers are coming back or if they are.
That's horrifying.
I know.
That is horrifying.
But it does feel like he's trying to fulfill that role.
Yeah. Next episode, this father figure is just gonna be gone too.
Yeah.
Bye, kids. Make boomerangs. But what I particularly loved about the kids playing with Appa and Aang is just like they really, as much as he's trying to make the tribe stronger, try to make the tribe feel safe, and also make these kids feel competent enough. They're still children though. And I think what Aang and Appa provided there of becoming a slide and just having fun, I think those kids really needed that. Because war takes away so much from you. And I think Sokka took away his mother and his father and also his childhood in a sense. And also Katara as well. So in a way, I think the war's not as apparent for these 4-year-old kids. Like it hasn't taken as much in a way that they perceive. And I feel like he might be coming from the right place, but I don't think I don't know, it's almost like he wants them to feel what he's feeling in these moments. I don't know if that's right. Hold up.
No, it's like, I understand kind of what you're saying is like these kids, it almost looks like maybe they don't get to have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I think that the reason that Sokka is a little bit harsher on them is because probably his childhood was very similar.
Yeah.
Where he didn't get to have a lot of fun because they've been at war for over 100 years. Like, there's been generations of children that grew up in this very serious situation, maybe not having as much fun.
Yeah.
And you also find out that, like, waterbending is a rare thing, you know? It's not as common as, like, you know... Because Katara is the only waterbender in the Southern Water Tribe.
There's also like 15 people.
I kind of imagine that there's probably more people in the tribe. They're just maybe spread out again. I don't know, but...
I hope so, but
it never, ever mentions any other water tribe other than theirs.
But they always just refer to all the water tribes as water tribes, so
True.
Maybe there is more.
But like the Northern Water
colonies,
Tribe is like the only Northern Water Tribe. So it just kind of makes sense that the Southern Water Tribe like emulated that, and it's the only Southern Water.
I feel like there'd be more.
So Cody, are you thinking like this might just be like one neighborhood of the particular Southern tribe? Is what you're hoping?
Yeah, well, like I feel like, you know, they kind of live more closer like to maybe how like, you know, the Native Americans did. So you have your like tribes, but they're all spread out just kind of all over the place, and they like kind of occupy their own little space or whatever. And you know, in times of trouble, they come together and they band together, but otherwise they live just very separate lives.
Well, that's the thing is though they've been for a war for 100 years. Wouldn't they have banded together by now?
But they're not under direct threat. That is the issue. Like,
but all of the men left. Like I feel like at that point the tribes would band together.
Well, I feel like. And I think that I'm still under the impression that there's more than just that little tiny community of the Southern Water Tribe.
Okay, we'll listen for it in later episodes.
Because
but I've literally never heard anything. I've never even implying.
There won't be, and there's not going to be. I feel like that it would be silly.
It could make sense.
It would make more like, especially when you come and you see. When in later episodes, when all the men are there of the Water Tribe and how many of them there are, how could all of those men fit into that tiny small village?
Right.
I guess maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just where my kind of thought goes.
Not willing to completely concede, but I do see where you're coming from.
Because I feel like I said, the Water Tribe follow more kind of like you kind of maybe Native American culture or like Mongolian nomadic culture, where like they are one people, but they live separate, like, tribal lives. But I could be wrong on that too.
I've actually never heard that perspective yet, but actually I'm rooting for that, honestly, because it just seems like that little village just seems so lonely. I feel like scared for them. It's like, oh no, it's like it's scary just being like isolated and like all alone in a small little group, and that's like your world essentially. Yeah. Any final thoughts on The Boy in the Iceberg?
That was some really long final thoughts we just had.
There's other stuff that needs to be said. No, I think that I think that we covered that pretty in depth. So
Oh, what's yeah.
That was so much fun. We didn't even get into the fashion part. I'm not even going to that. It was good.
So yeah, that was episode 1 of the Last Podbender. It wasn't, I guess we didn't say this, but we will be going through the entire series chronologically, episode by episode. Each podcast will be its own episode, and yeah.
Unless it's a double episode, then we're gonna do both episodes on one podcast.
A twofer.
Yeah, and we're just gonna go through it, talk about it in depth because we're big nerds. So
Nerd life.
anyways, thank you very much for listening to this first episode, and we hope that you join us for episode 2.
This is Tim Ocampo.
Tierra Penner.
And Cody Smith. And I guess we're signing off.
Yip, flamey old.
Flame on, hot people.
If you liked this episode of the podcast, why not leave a review? Whether you're listening on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcast, whatever podcatcher you may be listening on, ratings and reviews are huge. They help us to break through those evil algorithms, and it will help us to reach the most amount of glorious Avatar fans that we can possibly reach. If you would like up-to-date information regarding this podcast, follow us on Instagram. You can find us at the.last.podbender on Instagram. If you would like more information about all of the shows that Froggy Style Productions produces, including this one, follow them on social media, and you can find them at Froggy Style Productions on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For more ways in which you can support the show, visit fsproductions.ca.